Neneh has a long and very illustrious history in a wide range of music, going back to the 80s. She has a fascinating family connection with great jazz musician Don Cherry, and of course she spent much of her life living in Sweden, so she has very strong Nordic connections also, which makes her a perfect guest for the Larm Talks program. So please give her a very warm welcome. Thank you.
Do I need to, can you hear me? I've got to say that I'm really petrified, first of all.
I'm telling you, don't be petrified.
And I was really cussing my husband, Cameron, who's also, of course, my person I work with. He sort of said that we'd do this, and he was going to do it. We were going to do it together, originally. And I was like, okay, yeah, fine.
And he just disappeared mysteriously.
And he's not here, and I'm going to die.
Oh, you've met me before. We'll be fine. Hello, everyone. I'm Jude Rodgers. Thank you for the introduction, Rob. Yeah, thank you all for being here. I think we're both a bit petrified. I've done this before a few times. Have you done this before, Neneh?
No. Actually,
okay, well,
no, not really.
I'll be nice, don't worry, I'll be nice. So what we're essentially going to do today is have a lovely trek through your career, obviously talking a lot about what you're doing now. It's almost going back to your roots in a way, or back to the music that was part of your consciousness.
I think that was one of the really magical parts of doing and working with the thing and doing the Cherry thing. It was like a full circle, and it was like flying. It was like all of a sudden I had these new wings, and it was like really diving into an old memory bank of stuff. But I think, you know, there is a thing that I can get a bit allergic to in these sort of, you know, not in what you're saying, but just in the sort of, this kind of flowery, kind of bohemian thing. That I think that for a start, I can get kind of annoyed with people that are a bit like, oh yeah, in the bloody hippie days, and everyone was. Because I think that what the people, you know, that I grew up around and what my parents were trying to do was something that we're really carrying on now. They were starting something that was really important. So like, you know, they bought a schoolhouse, they moved out to the country, they wanted to be self-sufficient, they wanted to grow their own food, they wanted to, and their art and their creativity was not something that they did, you know, when they got on stage. It was not just a performance piece, it was their life, and that's why it was so important that my brother and I were, you know, the family, which was as much part of that as the music.
It was who they were, not just what they did.
Yeah, my mom said something quite good. She said once, she'd written it in a book, and I found it after she had died, like, my life is the stage, and the stage is the life that we lead, or something like that.
Yeah. What was the first music you heard that you thought, this is my thing?
Diana Ross Presents the Jackson 5.
Right.
My first album, and I had a swing in one of the apartments that we lived in. I used to swing and listen to that record.
How old were you then?
Probably about 6.
Right. Or was it about Diana Ross or about the music?
It was the Jackson 5.
Yeah.
It was just those songs. And then Sly and the Family Stone. And then, those are the really early ones. Then we have some funny ones. Me and my brother had, this is when I was a bit older, had this, I think she's Norwegian, Anita Hegeland. Does anyone remember? She had this song called Mitt Sommarlov. Mitt Sommarlov. It's like this hysterical child. She was like a very young, you know, child singer. Me and my brother were slightly obsessed with her for a while, but that was a bit later.
Yeah.
But I think, and that also involved swinging. We always had swings in the house, so we would like swing to these records. But and then I got given for, I think my 6th birthday, I got given a Rolling Stones record and a Janis Joplin record.
Wow.
I remember being slightly disappointed. But then they were like, I would always look at the covers, and then I started listening to them later.
Yeah. And so in terms of your own music, you know, when did you start thinking I could perform?
I think when I turned about 8 or 9, I like really rebelled against my family in a way, and I really wanted to be like totally straight, like literally marry a policeman and have a German Shepherd. It was like my fantasy, and to live in like a brick kind of bungalow, like really normal. Because I would, and I used to get furious at my mother who'd like painted the whole house by hand, and it was all. And then as it was like, I think I was in a bit of a battle with myself, trying to figure out where I was going to fit in. And I used to dance, and I thought maybe I would study dance. And then, luckily, when I was about 14, I found punk, or punk found me, or whatever.
Tell us about that.
Well, I had this horrible period of time where I'd gone to like a junior high school in Sweden, in a small town very near to where we have our family home. And I was going to 8th grade, and it just went really pear-shaped. And I started hanging out with the sort of local, raggare. It's like, really, they're like kind of, they're quite racist for a start. It's just like sort of ironic. But they were like the most exciting thing I could find. And I'd started kind of going out, getting drunk, running around. There was just this kind of town square. They drive these old American cars, and you would just drive around and around the town. And anyway, my mom was going to go to New York, and I decided to stay to try and go to school. And one morning I got up and I was like, I have to leave. I'm going to die if I stay here.
Yeah. So you're trying to go across to New York City?
As I'm trying to go to New York, and we go to
or
London with my mother. And we stay with some friends in Elephant and Castle.
This is in South London,
with this
not particularly nice bit of
on
South
a really
London.
roughneck housing estate. And I remember my friend's grandmother was lying in bed, tattooed, quite ill, with a bottle of brandy. She was like on her deathbed, and her mum worked in the tube station, really lovely lady. And Lee Blake, she used to live in my house in New York, because we had a loft in Long Island City. She was, the Talking Heads lived downstairs. She had been living with the Talking Heads, and she'd moved back to London, and we went to stay with her for the 2 nights or 3 nights or whatever to go to New York. It was the first time I went to London, and that very day, Public Image were playing on a rooftop on the King's Road, and we went down there, and it kind of changed my life, I suppose. And
so you're how old at this point? 14-ish, something like that?
I was 14.
Yeah. And is it true you went and dyed your hair immediately?
We went, literally. By the time I left, I had a bucket of crazy color in my hair. All of a sudden, I just felt like, okay, I can, and I started writing poetry, and I started playing the bass. That was the first thing I did. But I suppose it was the sort of DIY thing in punk rock. The kind of raw expression, and which I also rediscovered, or that also exists in hip-hop, right? And now, and also for me in the free jazz, or in the more avant-garde place in jazz, that place where, it's about making and finding your voice,
And it's about a sort of directness as well.
Yeah, and so the punk thing was really important, and some really important things happened, I dropped out of school, not to stay out of school, but I took some time out of school after that, when I got to New York, after the Freddie Laker journey and the becoming a punk, and started going out a lot. We used to hang out in this place called Tier 3, where bands like the Bad Brains and people like that used to play, and it was a really interesting melting pot, because there was like a real blend of kind of the punk thing, but also a lot of, seemed like, I don't remember if you remember that film Rockers, that Jamaican movie, like the whole crew of rockers had moved to New York. They all used to hang out in there, so there was a real mix of kind of reggae music and punk music being played. And anyway, that was my first sort of introduction to reggae. But what I wanted to say was, from there, having not gone to school for a while, the Slits invited my dad on a tour to join them, because they had really just discovered, I think, his record Brown Rice and his music, and got into artists like Sun Ra and stuff through the guys who were then in the pop group, who then formed Brit Brig and Panic. And obviously my dad thought, well, she's not in school, you know, I'm going to take her on this tour because I think it'll be a really good thing for her. And that's really when I met a lot of the people that I'm still really connected to. And obviously Ari was the person, the singer in the Slits. We became really, really tight. Like we were like sisters for a few years. Until I met a guy. She's like, would always happen. And
Always
got
happen.
pregnant and disappeared. And then not quite like that. But it was like, you know, serious schooling, right? I mean, in a way, being around these strong thinkers, you know. A lot of the music that they were doing was kind of where I came from. So, you know,
Yeah.
but I'm so thankful that it found me, because, you know, that's a lot of things for me are linked to Rip, Rig and Panic and the Thing and the Cherry Thing.
Yeah, I read you'd said that playing with the thing made you feel things you hadn't felt since Rip, Rig and Panic. And also, one thing that was really interesting, and this will kind of help us come on to kind of, you know, the period where you were best known kind of in the mainstream, really. You know, you said that the Rip, Rig and Panic experience for you saved me for when I was successful later. You said that in one interview. What did you mean by that?
I think there's something, you know, in that kind of thing where you think about, oh, being a so-called pop star. I mean, I never really took that thing kind of very serious, but there is something very restricting about that kind of environment. I think that's kind of why I stepped off out of away from that kind of forum after maybe the third album, because I just felt that it didn't fit me or I didn't fit it quite, and I felt that I would maybe start to feel a bit like a fraud. I don't know. I found it restricting.
What did you find restricting? The industry or the press or the way you were expected to be packaged? Or
as maybe all of those things. There was something with the Cherry thing when we worked together where it was just so concrete and melting down all at the same time.
You said it was like having a really amazing massage where you just obviously beaten up and you just come out going, I feel amazing.
Yeah, and it was and that kind of, in a way, fearless energy where, you know, I felt like not really like I was scared of what was going to come out or how it was going to sound, or I wasn't really reflecting on that stuff too much. It was just like,
So essentially, kind of Cameron, the story goes, Cameron, your husband, saw the thing. Or
yeah, Cameron and Matt from Circus went and saw the thing play in Stockholm and came back and said they should be your band. And I was like, God, what do you mean? That's like the weirdest thing I've ever heard. And then a couple of years later, Connie, our great friend in Stockholm, Connie Lindström, he's a sort of great positive force, and he's been a big part of the kind of music scene in Stockholm for a long time. And a good friend of Matt's kind of really cheerleaded it and helped it, made it happen. And, you know, we got together and we didn't know what we were going to do. We'd kind of chosen some songs that we were going to cover. We decided that we would do, you know, cover songs as a starting point, or that was what we wanted to do. And we just met in the studio in London and Acton.
It's really not very glamorous part of West London, not at all.
It's an awful part of London. But it was just like meant to be. It was like from the first few notes in, we didn't stop.
And this goes from you being used to working in, obviously, much grander studios, having lots of time to make records. You know, not infinite amounts of time, but not 4 days to make a record.
It's, you know, we've worked a lot at home. We've always had, you know, kind of, we're quite rough and ready. People quite often come to my house and go, it's nice, it's not horrible. Like, is this it? It's like, you're meant to live in like. So, but it was a great studio that our friend Robert Harder, who's also a co-producer on the record, had then. And we were just really tight, and it felt really homey, and we were all quite comfortable. And we did 3 takes. We did 3 songs, and we did 3 takes, and that was it. that was the first session done.
And you were listening to, you know, songs on a laptop in the stairwell, and they're rolling
working
their
out
cigarettes.
what we were going to do.
Yeah.
Smoking roll-ups and learning the songs. And so we had like 4 or 5 tunes that we thought we would do. We chose Martina, Too Tough to Die, because it's a tough song. The lyrics are good. It had spirit. It seemed like one that we could buy into easily, so we did it first. And then afterwards, Mats was like, and Cam, okay, great, let's do another one. I was like, you must be kidding. We have to do it again. It was only the first go, and they were like, no way.
But you've obviously recently been doing stuff with Rocket Number 9 as well.
I have.
You played in January for
We've
Giles
played one
Peterson.
gig, and we're playing 2 gigs here, so we're doing our 2nd gig tomorrow.
So how did that come about?
It came about really through Joaquin. He's sitting over there from Small Town. In a way, because I think he's putting out one of their records, and he had...
Does a Small Town Super Sound kind of taking you somewhere else?
I think it was, I mean, I'd heard of them and knew of them, but I think that he just had a feeling that, and I really liked them, but he was a bit like, this could be like The Thing, but like kind of like an electronic.
What was it like playing with them for the first time?
With Rocket Number 9?
Yeah.
No, as soon as we met, it was just like, it was just one of those things. It was like, oh, I know you. Yeah. It's just synths, keyboards, drummer playing triggers.
Do you envisage...
And I think that raw, sorry.
That's all right. No, carry on.
No, but I think that kind of raw kind of setup, I think it feels really good. It feels really right for me in the same way that The Thing was.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to speak to you.
And thanks for your time, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm glad you could stand it for so long.